My guest today is one of the finest cricketers England has ever produced, which says a lot since she doesn't actually hail from Yorkshire. The current ICC Women's Cricketer of the Year, no less. Her life began with what many would describe as a rather nomadic childhood. She was born in Japan, lived in Poland and the Netherlands, and sport was always a soundtrack. And once settled in England, she was on her way to the top. Having excelled in the age groups at Surrey County Cricket Club, she made her England bow aged 20. In the decades since, she has scooped multiple individual awards and played a pivotal role in England's ODI World Cup win on home soil in 2017. Earlier this year, she made the headlines again as the second most expensive player drafted for the inaugural Women's Premier League in India. She certainly lived up to that price tag, playing a leading role as Mumbai Indians won the first edition of the tournament. She has now set her eyes on an Ashes win this summer. We'll talk about that. So please welcome Nat Sciver-Brunt onto the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. What a welcome.
Well, as a history tutor of mine at Loughborough University, I know you're a Loughborough grad, which I'm very proud as Chancellor to recognise very early on in this. Once famously said to me, we only ever reach perfection on our CV, but your CV is pretty lustrous, I have to say.
I mean, yeah, it mentions Loughborough University. Luckily, it doesn't mention, what I was doing there. But what I was doing there was getting good at cricket, which turns out quite useful.
I think you're being quite modest, because I know as Chancellor of that university, our sports science degree is subscribed between 8 and 10 times. So I'm going to make the case for the defence there, even if you're not prepared to.
Fair enough.
I did open up. I'm fascinated. Before we get into the cricket, I'm always fascinated in the hinterland of the people I'm talking to, and I always like to start, because I'm a great believer that we're all a suffusion, an amalgam of landscape and geography and friends and family and education. I know Loughborough was a large part of that, but yours interestingly is an interesting set of landscapes. I think I described it as being a slightly nomadic existence.
Yeah.
Explain that, because for listeners, they may not be aware of why you were dotting around in some of the big capitals of the world.
Yeah, so it was actually my mum. Her job and is part of the Foreign Office, and so she, got posted to different places, and we all followed in tow. My dad, me, my younger brother and younger sister. And for us, it was it felt normal at the time. I mean, we didn't really, have anything to compare it to. But a lot of people now say, oh, you moved around when you were young. People who stayed at the same house, stayed in the same village for their whole, lives. It's different. But yeah, I guess for me, it didn't feel different. It felt, just a part of life. You're right in saying sport. Sport, I think I've actually discovered this recently. Sport helped me feel part of something, but obviously in different countries. But playing team sport was my way of connecting to people and my way of socializing, and at school, obviously making friends was fine, but I think I did my best work in a team sport and getting to know people through playing, I guess. But that was in football, really. When I was in Holland and Poland, I hadn't really played cricket up until I came back to England at age 12, 13, something like that. And I mean, in Holland and Poland, they don't really play cricket, so it wasn't like I wanted to play cricket, but it wasn't available. But, my family was always very sporty. We did, everything together, and mum and dad were both keen on all sorts of sports. So that's what they passed on to me, my brother and sister, just trying our hand at everything, I guess.
I'm going to park that thought for a moment, or I'm certainly going to come back to it. But it's rare for me on a podcast to be actually paying tribute to a mother. I'm going to actually thank your mother because you're being characteristically modest. Your mother is currently our ambassador, first female ambassador actually to Japan. She arrived there in March of 21, and those listening to this will probably immediately recognize that that was right in the epicenter of a delayed Olympic Games. And I know that if I was wearing my British Olympic Association hat, I'm not at this moment, but I know there are many in the organisation that would want me to thank her for doing what was a sterling job, particularly for Team GB that performed so well out there. But so look, I park that for the moment. But I'm interested in your observations because, yeah, you talked about playing football and other sports. You obviously came from a sporting family. You've just said that. But I've always been of the instinct that none of us actually pick our sport. Our sport tends to pick us. And I was, I drifted towards an individual sport. My kids, for instance, are not interested in individual sports. They actually like the camaraderie of teams. Was that really what drove you towards cricket? Although, I mean, I know you played hockey and I know you played, obviously, football. And the only thing I don't notice is any reference to track and field here. I was feeling a bit let down there. But
I think the social aspect of the sport chose me. So, I mean, I played tennis when I was younger as well. I couldn't keep the ball in the court, let alone be on the court as an individual and, go through all the like mental battles with everything. And yeah, the team sport and the social aspect and the belonging that I got from that was what made me, I guess, side with cricket. Like you say, I think there's been a lot of talk actually in other countries about playing different sports up until quite a later age, like you say, not knowing what you wanted to play, but actually then benefiting from that in the sport that you do choose. Because I mean, there's people who've grown up playing one sport all of their lives, and in cricket, there's so many different skills that you can get from different sports.
you make the right choice looking back? Or did the sport make the right choice in you?
Definitely. I mean, if I hadn't, I guess, just decided on it was between football and cricket, and the team in the cricket club that I was part of, I got on better with, and ultimately that was my deciding factor into playing 10 years for England and everything else that's come with it, which seems crazy, but yeah, that was a huge part of it. And I mean, I forced my sister into joining the club with me for the first year because I wanted to have a familiar face and someone to turn up with and not feel socially awkward with, I guess.
Okay, well, look, I'm going to jump forward a little bit because you made your England debut 10 years ago in an ODI at Louth in Lincolnshire, not a million miles from my own backyard, and that was against Pakistan. 10 years on, you're sitting here as England vice-captain. As we record this, I think we're only 6 weeks shy of an Ashes tour. I'm fascinated in two things. I'd love to hear your recollections because for anybody, it's a huge, I mean, there are a few that are privileged to actually compete for their country, but for many out there, your recollection and your realization of that moment will be an interesting one.
So I remember I actually, in the hotel with the team, we were sharing rooms at the time, and I had to share with Charlotte Edwards, the captain, who was, terrifying as a debutant, as a young player. not wanting to put a foot wrong and not wanting to, you know, say anything silly or out of line. So I was rooming with her, and then getting to the ground, the red arrows were flying over. You know, it's a beautiful like club ground which was Aaron Brindle, who was part of the team at the time. It was her club, so you know she had a hand in organising all of this. But as for the game, what I remember was misfielding a couple of balls at cover. So I got sent down to third man to go and think about things. And
it's always funny. It's always funny how we remember the things that don't go. I mean, competitors always remember the things that don't go well. It's always your friends that remind you that actually a lot of things did go okay that day.
yeah, I think I got maybe like 5 runs, and I think I did take a wicket, which is a success, definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
I was more of a bowler really when I started. I was batting at probably 8 or 9 when I debuted. I wouldn't know, but yeah, it's changed a lot since then.
Let's pick up on the change, because it's 10 years on. We're sitting 6 weeks away, as I've said, from an Ashes tour.
Yeah.
Could you have imagined the women's sport, would it be in such ascendancy over that decade?
No. I mean, like all of the people who I started playing with and who are about maybe 29 and above in the team, everyone started because they loved playing cricket. I mean, everyone starts because they love playing cricket, but no one knew that there would be a career to be made out of it, or, you know, that we'd be part of a WPL auction that is worth a hell of a lot of money. But so I wanted to play because I wanted to represent my country, and I wanted to make my family proud, and I wanted to enjoy a game that I love with a team that would eventually become my family. So I mean, to sit here now and think about everything that cricket's been through and where we're going is just crazy. I don't think anyone would have guessed it. But people are starting now and having, you know, seeing a real stepping stone and career to be made out of cricket. And
I'm guessing that in 2013, you weren't sitting there looking at this as a career, a sustainable career. You were looking at this as something you enjoyed doing, and if people came to watch you, that was even better, and you do it for as long as you could, but you had other ambitions.
yeah, ultimately, I didn't know what my ambitions were. I was obviously at university hoping to get a degree that would help me to get a job to do on the side, as well as train to play for England. And yeah, I was very happy to do that. I wanted to represent my country, and I wanted to do that at all costs, really. And yeah, I couldn't tell you where exactly that's come from, but yeah, my upbringing has definitely had a part in that.
Did 2017, the World Cup win, change everything?
It definitely did. I think COVID probably slowed things down again, and then we're sort of on the back up after that. But playing at Lords was always infrequent. I mean, it rained for one game, so we didn't play. And I think playing in that World Cup final was probably the second time I've played at that ground. And to see it as it was in that game in all its glory, with every seat taken and everyone cheering for both teams, it was an incredible thing to be part of. And I mean, we managed to burgle the win, really, because India should have won, but it was written, the story was written for us. And yeah, what an amazing thing to be part of, and for things to become, to, I guess, to grow from that was, yeah, incredible.
I know that was, I mean, that was a mountainous moment for you, but I'm guessing, as you've alluded, that was a pretty pivotal moment for the women's game as well, because, I mean, you scored a half century. I think it's an interesting observation about the win against India. I tend to fail the Norman Tebbit test here because my mother was Indian. So if it's not England, then I'm always supporting India, and occasionally get torn between the two. But being serious for a moment, I guess that was a pretty pivotal moment for the game, because I sensed that was when brands began to wake up to the potential, and the central contracts became much more they became more embracing, and suddenly there was a career path, wasn't there?
Exactly, and probably from receiving the first contract, which was at the time, I didn't have to. I could stop thinking about what I was going to do, to make money, or to live, or whatever it was. But it actually gave, the clear picture in front of you that the women's game has got places to go, and the only way we're going to get there is for, more funding, or more broadcast deals, and more sponsorship, and everything. And that image and that event was the perfect way to encourage more, I guess. Yeah.
Is it a surprise to you that it's been 6 years since England won last won a white ball tournament? I mean, off the back of such a hugely successful moment, I mean, how do you reflect on that? I mean, I'm always interested because, if you look at a sport, I tend to think that, if the cycles sort of move roughly rhythmically, then you're saying it's sport. If you wait too long, then sometimes, and I'm probably on the other side of that fence now, you sort of have to look at the administration, you look at the quality of the management, the leadership. I'm interested in that 6 year period. How do you view that?
I guess so. Leading up to that World Cup, it was actually our sole focus as a team was being at Lords, being on the pitch for the final, and hopefully lifting the trophy. And actually, after that, me and the team we were a bit lost, and so we'd sort of lost a little bit of focus, and I guess the goal in which we wanted to reach. When you're at the top, then you don't become the chaser, you become chased, and we couldn't sustain that. Also, a lot of the personnel changed within the past probably 2 years after that, which is unsettling in any team, I guess. It's from a cricket point of view, it's extremely frustrating that we haven't been able to win another white ball tournament. And yeah, don't get me wrong, that's something that we want to put right. Being able to train in the way that we can with professional contracts and the programs that we've been given is, you have to put money in the bank before you get a result a little bit. And the way that we've grown as a side, then in the last 2 years, probably in the last year, is everything seems to be going bigger and bigger and bigger, but in a shorter space of time. But I mean, the world game has grown as well. And we can't look past obviously Australia, who will be facing soon in the Ashes, but they're leading the way with the professionalism in the women's game, I think.
You think there are things we can learn from that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they've got different structures and ways of doing things, but the way that we've been able to put money into our regional setup and things like that will help the England side in 2, 3, 4 years' time, where there's more competition for places, there's more pressure on people in the England side to perform, and standards should should hopefully rise. But yeah, there's nothing. I would like nothing more to win a white ball tournament.
Well, the first challenge is actually not a white ball tournament. We're sitting 6 weeks, as I said, 6 weeks shy of the Ashes, and that's an enormous moment because you'll be playing in some of the great cricket venues in England. What are your? I'm interested. What are your? I'm interested in obviously your hopes and expectations on the field of play, but how do you want that to manifest itself as a legacy beyond the field of play?
Well, I think playing at all of the, big, iconic venues for the Ashes and for, international cricket is something that we've been sort of working towards probably in the last 2-3 years since the 100, really, where there's been more of a market for women's cricket. But that should, I guess, give us a great platform to raise the profile. But I mean that it doesn't only depend on, the results and on us performing or the way in which we play or, whatever it is, but it is a good chunk of it. And that we'll never have as big of a summer that is coming up probably. And the level of it will just increase, and we need to be able to match that with our performance, really. And coming off the back of a disappointment again in a T20 World Cup and all of this, there's, I guess, things to be addressed. And yeah, the way in which we play, or our new coach has instilled in us, is more important than ever, I guess, and not shy away from the battle and not shy away from a team that's ranked higher than us. But hopefully we can slip under the radar with not being favourites on the pitch, and then do all the things that come naturally to us when you're thinking about the bigger game and custodian for cricket and women's sport. But I don't know. Yeah, it's a big summer coming. Actually, not knowing what the summer will bring. I mean, maybe we should catch up after the summer and really think about it.
Well, maybe we should actually. That's a really good idea. Thank you for agreeing to a second podcast. I normally have to work a lot harder with my victims, but no, thank you. You start at Trent Bridge, which is also a landmark because it's the first ever 5-day test.
Yeah.
And I've done a little bit of number crunching here. You've played 8 test matches.
Yeah.
But between now and 2025, the ICC have only got 7 scheduled. And I'm interested that I'm a little bit disappointed. I don't know how you feel that the ICC seems to have actually written off women's test cricket, or is that a harsh assessment?
Okay, if you asked every international women's team whether they wanted to play a test match, they'd all say yes. So I guess we're on different pages with that. And playing an Ashes test match is, the thing that motivates people more than others, really. And just it's funny because you know it's going to be a physical test, but the weighting that it holds in the playing for England, playing for the Ashes, playing against Australia, playing against the best in the world, and what that means, it outweighs everything else, really. But yeah, I guess not everyone sees women's test matches in that way, but we have got a 5th day, like you say, and we're desperate to get a result because the last however many I've played in has all been a draw or a loss. But yeah, that 5th day will certainly help us get a result, and hopefully the result that we want.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because, of course, we've seen the Lionesses fill stadiums. We've just recently watched the Red Roses at Twickenham. I think a world record crowd of 56,000, which is extraordinary. So far, ticket sales have been respectable for the Ashes. So I think about 55,000 have been sold so far. But I guess the aim must be to go higher than that. And this again, if 2017 was a seminal moment, this sort of strikes me as being another one of those moments.
Yeah, and it, well, hopefully it will be, I guess. And ticket sales have, been told today even, things are selling out quicker than ever before. But I mean, they also started the ticket sales way earlier than they ever have before. Like our matches got announced when the men's did, in September last year, wherever it was. But just being able to, obviously having an Ashes series for the women and the men at the same time is something that you can really build on. And yeah, hopefully we can sell the tickets and make it that moment, because we probably won't have as great an opportunity as this to make it, really.
Hold on to the concept of aiming high, because I must ask you about the launch of the Women's Premier League, which in itself was a game-changing tournament that I actually genuinely think has changed the landscape of women's cricket forever. But again, let me start with the personal, because you were a crucial part of the Mumbai Indians team that won the inaugural WPL. You provided match-winning knocks in both the semi-final and the final. I'm fascinated, given my own heritage. How did you find India? How did you find that atmosphere? I mean, I've rarely been anywhere where you sort of recognize that a sport is actually a religion.
We've toured India before, but it was nothing like that.
No.
Just from arriving, everything that comes with it, being sold as a concept is a new thing for women's cricket. But
you were the second highest paid player in the draft, weren't
you? Yeah, the sheer weight of that could have, tipped pressures over so high that, maybe I couldn't cope. But it was.
But you did.
I did, but I think it largely down to feeling confident in my cricket, and being able to just naturally play rather than having to think about too much and get too far ahead of things. But what an incredible tournament it was. I mean, I've watched like men's IPLs and how mad it really is, but experiencing it is a completely different thing. And just, yeah, it was the atmospheres that were created. Obviously, it was lucky that we were the home team, but playing in front of crowds like that, yeah, it was just different, and the energy was incredible.
Give me an example of a crowd, of a capacity crowd there.
The DY Patil Stadium, I think, holds 60,000 people. But the final was played at Brabourne, which is the Club of India. And that was a bit smaller.
That's a beautiful old stadium.
30 or 40, yeah. We played in one city. We played at two grounds. The only one that really, and the world, India is endless, and the opportunities are endless. Yeah.
There were 6 other England players that actually came through the draft, and actually some life-changing figures. But others, of course, it's the way of the world, were less fortunate. Did you find that a challenge, given the disparity in the salary bands?
So in the auction, I think the challenge was, for me, was people being picked up or not. Like,
Yeah.
Catherine, obviously put herself into the draft and didn't get picked up. And as her wife, I want to support her, but also be really happy about what's happened to me. And so it was a tricky time, but maybe I ignored it, or the price tag put on me was something that I didn't really not believe, but it just felt so unbelievable that I didn't know if it was didn't know if it was true, but it didn't feel real. So actually the girls who did go to the IPL, to the WPL, sorry, it felt like a bit of camaraderie, that we were all sort of in it together, and we were all going through similar experiences and similar chaos, and so it all sort of felt like we were in it together. Obviously when you're playing against each other and playing against your own teammates usually is very tricky, and something that's not that enjoyable, but yeah, it was obviously there's differences in pay and pay levels across franchise cricket and across England, so we sort of experience that difference quite often, but it's funny that the expectations from everyone is the same.
I'm guessing you see the WPL as being a huge success. I mean, there were incredible levels of investment, and I'm interested. Do you think there are lessons to be learned, particularly from the men's game, in terms of how the women's game might be shaped in its future? And I'm particularly interested also in terms of ensuring that the power, both financial and administrative, doesn't really end up in the hands of just the big three. I think for me there were some interesting concepts there.
Yeah, I think like we sort of, the men's cricket sort of went through what we'll go through, but they went through it in like probably 10 years. It's people, international players experience choosing franchise cricket and things like that. But the women's game, you've already sort of seen it. There's players from outside the big three, like you say, who have decided to finish their international careers and take up franchise opportunities, which you can't blame them when you work out that the same amount of money can be made in a month than in a year with comparing different employers. It's a tricky time, and something that needs to be handled carefully, I guess. But from an England perspective, when people are playing, you want everyone's 100% commitment to playing for England. You don't want thinking about playing for a franchise just before a tournament, or whatever it is. The balance has to be right between being able to play and then concentrating on what you're playing in at that moment. And well, for me growing up, I always wanted to represent England, and I still do, and that's the best players who want to play for England are playing for England and committed to that, and taking opportunities when it's right and when it suits them. I mean, you can't go around playing for England and play all of the tournaments and spend more than 2 weeks in your own bed during the year. It just doesn't work. And I mean, some people might like that, but not me.
Look, I'm actually, you've introduced an issue which I really want to explore with you, because you've talked about the challenges, you've talked about the pressures, and I always sense that, yes, there are external pressures, of course, on competitors at the highest level, but I've always sensed that the biggest pressure is often self-inflicted. It's the desire to be better this time next year than you are now, to be better tomorrow. Whether it's in the in the nets or on the training track. Do you think that those? I mean, I'm guessing I know the answer to this, but I'd like you to sort of take me through it. That those pressures had a cumulative effect, didn't they, on you in the same way that they have on many competitors? I mean, I've just got a list of some of the things that you actually had to countenance in and around, getting to the very highest level in your sport. You had an Ashes series, you then had a quarantine, you then had an isolation period in advance of the New Zealand World Cup. You had a short break, you got married, you then had the summer to think about, you had the South Africa all formats tour, you had a Commonwealth Games. I'm getting tired I'm getting exhausted just going through this list. You had the 100, which of course we're looking forward to that in August. That's sort of revolutionized a large part of the sport. You took on the vice captaincy. I'm not really surprised that you decided that just a period of decompression was in order.
Yeah, it was a lot, and it just touring when there were still COVID protocols in place was hard, and it took the fun out of touring, really, because that was growing up. That was part of growing up in cricket, having made my debut. That was the best part. You're touring, you're with your mates, you're like going out and exploring, you're making memories and everything, and that was stripped back and taken away from us, which we were still sort of experiencing in Australia and New Zealand. And yeah, then couple that with a bit of disappointment that we sort of capitulated after the test match in the Ashes. We got to the final of the 50 over World Cup and lost to Australia again in the space of 2 months. And then fast forward to the summer and all that brought, and Heather then picking up an injury and me taking over, and it all felt a lot. And by the time
Was there one particular moment where you just actually, this is just out of kilter? There isn't enough balance here.
I think the biggest part for me was allowing myself to take better, because in how I am as a person, I want to do everything right, try and not miss out on anything, put absolutely everything into my training, into the games, into it all. I take on a big role as an all-rounder, but one that I wouldn't want to give up. And so I wouldn't want to miss out on anything, and saying that I need to go home or miss something was something very, very hard to get my head around. Ultimately knowing, well, on the other side of it, I know it was the best decision for me. But
it may have been the best decision, but it's also, look, it's a brave decision. I don't know. I haven't spoken to too many people, either friends or on podcasts, that have made that decision. I mean, it was absolutely the epicenter of your career, and yet you made that judgment. I guess there are two questions I'd love to explore here. One is, that is a brave decision. And secondly, are we as sports organizations, as federations, I'm president of World Athletics, I'd spend a lot of time thinking about this. Are we doing enough to really be acute and attuned to the mental and physical welfare of competitors?
For me, I guess giving myself permission to say that it was too much, and all of the worries that I had, letting people down, not leaving the team in a good place and all of this, it ultimately, after having made that decision, those things that I was so worried about became much smaller. But just allowing myself to do that was such a big part of it. And I think if, there's support, there's always support in the ECB and within our team. But if you're not receptive to actually receive it or ask for it, it makes it tricky. And I think,
Do you think we should be, but do you think we should be more proactive? I mean, it's sometimes these individual decisions are really difficult. I've known that there've been moments in my career where I really probably should have taken a month or two off. I haven't, because, as you said, you don't, it's a short career. You don't want to miss out on anything. But do you think we should, in federations, just be a bit more proactive and say, actually, sometimes the competitor is not always in the best. Look, we don't want to be, we don't want to be nanny knows best, but sometimes the competitors may not be in the best position to make those decisions for themselves, or at least alone in the decision.
Yeah, you're right. Because I mean, in team sport, obviously, I've got experience in that. I wouldn't be able to say about individual sports, but there's such a big camaraderie around the group. You wouldn't want to let anyone down, and actually, having the decision taken out of your hands would be easier. You might not like it or agree with it as much, but that is definitely one way of it. One way of helping, or not letting people get to the crux that I did.
You've been incredibly generous with your time, and I could go on chatting all day. I'm going to finish on two quick sub-themes here. You are, by any stretch of the imagination, and certainly in any litmus test for me, you are a serial winner. And your list of achievements is frankly lustrous. You're a World Cup winner. You're an inaugural WPL winner. You've been Wisden, or you are currently Wisden Cricketer of the Year. You're the ICC Women's Cricketer of the Year. You won the Walter Lawrence Award on 3 occasions. I could keep going on. Is there, and actually, often when I ask this question, it's the most unexpected answer that I get. But what actually in your career has been your proudest moment? And it may not be one of those.
I think that's a hard question. I mean, I feel like the 2017 World Cup win.
Yeah.
That is such a big moment for me and the side. I think, having played quite a big part in some of the games that led us to the final, I feel like I had quite a good contribution in that. But I guess
I think that's a slight understatement, if you don't mind me saying, but sorry, I stopped you.
I guess so. In the WPL final, the final sort of in terms of finals that I've played, it's been quite similar. Teams getting an okay score and then not being able to chase it, and usually it's England that haven't been able to chase it. But learning from that and not letting that happen again, and having a huge part in that game, that for me is my biggest moment, I think. And yeah, being able to say that I didn't throw my wicket away. I was able to see the team through to the win, hit the winning runs. It was, a huge moment.
I think it was a huge moment for a lot of people. I'm rather pleased you chose that, because it was one of the moments that I will always remember. You mentioned actually in our opening salvos, you mentioned Charlotte Edwards, and I think partly how terrified you were of of rooming with her and just the sheer magnitude of what she already achieved. But you've also played against some of the greats like Sarah Taylor, Elise Perry, Lee Raj. Past and present, who would you love to be playing alongside?
And anyone can be in my team. So
Anyone. This is your desert island disc moment.
I'd like to play alongside Elise Perry, which sort of pains me to say actually, but as someone who I've played, all of my career against her, and all of the, she had a period where she didn't score less than 50 against us for like 6 or 7 matches, and she just, won them series, won the matches. And to take some nuggets of that and take some wisdom from her, from one all-rounder to another, I think it would be special.
The great coaches you worked with?
Well, to be fair, Charlotte Edwards, the coach, was way different to Charlotte Edwards, the player.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
How different?
I guess just in the relationships that she had with all the players when she was playing and when I started, it felt like the magnitude of what she'd already achieved felt so big that it wasn't attainable, and it wasn't, so her as a person wasn't accessible almost. So, I had the utmost respect for her and enjoyed playing with her, but delving into her as a person, I've been able to do more when she was coaching, because she's not, got the game captain head on and things like that, and is a bit more open. And me as a person, I have grown so much from cricket, and willing to make that conversation easier, or be more open to everything really. So yeah, we've both changed, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not going to eat into your summer anymore, and certainly not into your physical or your mental preparation. But good luck this summer. Mercifully, I don't actually have to enter the moral maze this time because it's Australia, not India. So I will be watching. The very best of luck to you and the team. And thanks for being with us today.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to Extraordinary Tales in Extraordinary Times, brought to you by CSM.